Hey, good morning, everybody. Robert Pohl and I are just getting our first session of the day started. So uh, more than Robert, I'm figuring out still how to use the tool here. So thank you for your patience while we're figuring it out.
I thought I had tested this all last night because I just had like a button to join. It still kicked me back to that. Otherwise.
So, Alan, is there someone that Colleen could call on your side so she could still troubleshoot, try to get in versus?
Yeah, she can call me.
Yeah, she can.
Thing that said backstage and everything, but
Yeah, have her contact Joe Morlock.
So 503.
503.
Oh wait, is this for everybody out there? Huh?
Yeah, this is going out to everybody, Joe. So maybe you don't want to do that.
Well, I could, but I won't answer
Hold
the
on,
phone.
Colleen. I'm getting a number for you to call. So 503.
That 806
806
0046.
0046.
All right. So, Colleen, here it is. It's 503 806 0046, and that's Joe Morlock.
Oh, okay.
So if you give him a call, he'll try to get you guys
Okay.
all taken care of.
Just go ahead and start and I'll do it.
All right. Sounds good. All right.
Okay, I think we're ready to start. We're missing one of our speakers here right now because we're still working through some difficulties. But good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Miedema. I'm on the ACPE board, and I'm also the executive director for technology for the North Shore School District. I'm joined here this morning by Robert Pohl, who is the executive director for technology services, transportation and food services, which that is, you may be the only one in the state who has that title, Robert. Congratulations. Robert is also a former North Shore employee, and Robert and I have known each other since 2005 and been a good friend ever since. And Robert, is there anything else I should say about you and wonderful things that you've done or are going to do?
Whatever they are, they're not true. And my last name is a 4-letter word. So if that helps,
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
no.
Well, I'm going to go. I'm sorry, Robert, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, that's how I get treated at the district is, some people love me. Some people think my last name's a 4-letter word. So, but it's always in the vein of trying to make sure that students have what they need.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Robert here for our presentation on creative financing as a catalyst for change. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. I'm going to try to monitor those, and if they come up, Robert, you might ask me, or I might interrupt and just say, here's a good question, or however you want to manage it. We'll muddle through. But I'm going to go ahead and hide myself and mute myself right now. So thank you, Robert. Good to see you this morning.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen here, make sure that it goes out there. So hopefully that pops up here in just a moment. First off, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody at ACPE for pulling together this conference this year. I know with everything else that has been going on with our reactions to COVID and trying to support staff and students through that they've been just as busy doing that as all of us. But in addition, planning this conference, I've really appreciated the AirMeet platform so far. I've gotten to attend several different online events that have been different. This one seems like a really good choice, so I'm hoping that this is a great experience. So just say that off the bat. This session, the plan for our session is kind of to tell a story of what happened pre-COVID for the Anacortes School District and how we were basically able to be serendipitously, we hadn't planned to be so well prepared for COVID going into COVID, but because of some of the early decisions we made, we were in a situation of being able to respond to COVID in ways that we had never been able to anticipate. So there's two of us presenting today. I do have Colleen O'Donnell. She's the Senior Vice President of Insight Financial Services. She'll be here to answer any questions, specific questions about leasing and how that works. I'm here to just tell you the story of how we used leasing as a way to take advantage of the capital of our tech levy as well as our BEA general fund dollars to really make things happen for staff and students. So hopefully she'll be able to join us here in just a moment. I'm going to just take a quick look in the session to see if she's been able to join us yet. I'm looking for her picture in the chat. So Alan, if you happen to see her pop in, if you could just make her co-host at some point, that'd be awesome.
I will absolutely.
All right, great. So some of the key points of our session today, some of the things that we found, some things we planned for and some things we found after was in terms of using financing, leasing, as an option for financing your big technology projects. Some of the things that we learned about this process or that we earned as a result of these decisions is some of these key points here. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure that through all of the technology projects that they were learning forward, that the technology should always be second place to learning. So when we were talking about professional development, obviously it was a learning first and technology second. So the tools we chose need to be easy to use. So that way it didn't interrupt the learning process. Equitable access. We've just recently passed a race and equity policy in the district. So we're looking at everything very carefully in terms of our decision making to make sure that our marginalized students aren't somehow negatively impacted by decisions that are made for the whole. We wanted to make sure that there were fewer deployments. So one of the things as we were looking at past historical practices in purchasing was that the more deployments you had, the more incidents of change you created, and the more incidents of change caused more and more disruption to teachers and students in the learning process. So we wanted to make sure that there were fewer of those to happen, so that way they could stay focused on teaching and learning. Software consistency, I think there's some benefits there. Everybody can agree to that if you have fewer tools, there are fewer things to manage. And how do you make that more impactful? And we worked through professional learning to help our teachers see some of those things. Hardware reliability, predictable budgeting, and also I think the biggest piece of all is when you pass a tech levy, which is for those of you who are in other places that don't have tech levies in the state of Washington support schools in ways so that way we can purchase technology, we can purchase curriculum and materials, we can purchase professional development and staff to support professional learning. It's a tax to support some of these extra needs that we have in schools. One of the things that we wanted to make sure through these projects was to make sure that our community, by passing what I'd call a pretty rich technology levy, they saw instant gratification within the first year of that passage. I wanted them to see something big and exciting and new in classrooms. So that way when parents came for parent-teacher conferences or their kids came home with devices, that they knew that that was their technology levy dollars at work. So I'll kind of go into the story of Anacortes. Like most districts, we have a 4-year technology plan. It has all of the components of most technology plan. It speaks to one-to-one student devices. It talks about staff devices. It talked about display technologies and the addition of voice amplification. It talked about things like making things standard and consistent. Hey, Colleen, it looks like you were able to join us. Welcome. Talked about providing professional development training by adding additional staff, instructional coaching. It talked about infrastructure upgrades. So how do we plan to upgrade our Wi-Fi network? And finally, it also spoke to the need for technical support staff. So pretty basic plan. I think if you read ours, you would see the same things you would read in your own with some variation. Talking about our mission. So our mission in a nutshell is to make sure that in our tech plan it speaks to how do we engage students every day in real work that matters. And we do that pretty consistently through these 6 things. And so this is something that our former superintendent and former assistant superintendent drove as the message to the district. If anything's worth doing, it's to make sure that kids can read critically, listen attentively, think carefully, speak clearly, write consciously, and through the medium of technology, share their truth. So as they're learning, they should be able to do these things. So all of our technology should support these 6 items. And it's easily said, it's easily written. And so as we look at content, curriculum, and the technology supports that, we look very carefully to make sure that the tools match this. terms of Anacortes, we are a very small school district in Northwest Washington State. So we're about an hour and 20 minutes north of Seattle and about an hour from Vancouver, BC. We are on an island, so we are the gateway to the San Juan Islands. If you, some of the views that you can see where the island's connected by Deception Pass on one side, and on the other, we've got Burroughs Bay, which is this middle pictures. It's a pretty amazing place to be, a pretty amazing place to live. We have beautiful schools. We have great families that support those schools, and we're a small school district. So we have about 2,500 students right now, and about 350 staff. House prices, because of its beauty and area, are pretty on the high side for our region, Skagit County. And so it does, I would say we are a privileged location of the world to live in, and our families are pretty well resourced. And so they were able to provide some great resources for us. And I thought it would be important because I think Anacortes School District is unique in many ways to kind of also show you what our balance statement is in terms of our revenues, because I know that not all districts are as well funded. But hopefully the story, why leasing, why this was a catalyst for change for the Anacortes School District, I think you'll find some things that apply. So our revenues annually, we run in about $2.9 million. That includes everything coming in from my general fund, our tech levy, E-rate dollars and reimbursements, surplus sales as we've had them, the fees that we charge families for technology, those kinds of things. So that's what we run. Our expenses run about $2.4 million, well, close to 2.5 annually every year. So there's a little bit of excess. That's our kind of rainy day fund, supports other things. So you can see kind of just where we're at. So, you know, this year, this is where we're running. This year was kind of an anomaly year. We don't usually run so in the excess, but we had a big fire settlement that occurred in our main data center that we got resolved. So that was also a COVID thing, but that's not this presentation. So if you want to learn how to replace a data center, that might be next year's ACPE presentation. It's been quite the year. So just wanted to share that just so you kind of knew where we start in terms of who we are. We're a small team. We have 6 technicians on the team. Through COVID, we were mostly 5. We've hired someone recently to take on the systems administrator role. So I think it's pretty standard for a small school district to have about this many staff. So I'll go back to the technology plan and some of the challenges of the plan. So I wasn't part of the team that wrote the plan. I was the part of the team that inherited the plan. I came to Anacortes School District in 2018 after the plan was written. And taking a close look at that plan, one of the things that was in the plan is that the deployments were all based on purchasing, based on capital we had that year, which basically meant that all of the deployments had to be, or deployments of computers, technology, had to be staggered by some metric. And so this plan, they decided to stagger their deployments by grade level. So 1 year, 1st and 2nd grade would get it. And then the next year, 3rd and 4th would get it, and 5th and 6th and so on. And then kindergarten in the plan was the absolute last of all. And so if we had followed that plan, our kindergartners would have seen no benefit from the technology levy until they were 4th graders. And so we saw there were some significant equity issues with that. The other thing that we found as a challenge in our tech plan is based on these staggered deployments that our purchasability was super small. So as a small school district with 2,500 students and you're deciding to purchase a quarter of the devices that you need each year, you're looking at maybe 250 to 600 devices at any given moment, which if you're HP, Lenovo, or Dell, you're just not going to get the best pricing. So we knew up front that that could be a challenge as we try to get the best pricing and the best bang for our buck. And I would imagine as you out there, you guys have the same problems. If you're a smaller school district, you're running into the same issues that we're doing. Small deployments mean you can't negotiate like you can if you're a large district and you're purchased thousands of devices. So I'm just checking, make sure I don't have any questions out there.
None yet.
Okay, So one of the things that as I looked at the tech plan with the new leadership team that was new also with me at the time, we decided to rethink the status quo. We all inherited this tech plan. We had the ability to do some crazy things. And so we knew we needed to rethink things. And one of the things that drove this rethinking of our plan was this quote from Casey Knutson, who was no longer with Anacortes School District, moved on to be with his parents in Eastern Washington for Lake Chelan. But he said in one of our meetings, our planning meetings, that if it's worth doing for one, it's worth doing for all. And that really guided all of the deployments from that point forward, that if we were going to do anything for one group of students, we should plan on doing it for all the students. And that's one thing that prevented us from being able to do that, we realized, was capital. We didn't have the capital we needed to do something for everyone. We only had the capital to do something for a few. So it required us to go outside to find a partner who would support us in helping us achieve, or what should I say? We need capital now. Colleen, you probably could say this a whole lot better than I can, but we knew we had an $8 million tech levy, but we could only collect $2.2 million of it annually, and we needed to gain all of that $8 million up front.
So we needed a strategy to be able to help accelerate the deployment. How's that?
Yep. That's perfect. Yeah, we needed a strategy to accelerate the deployment. I like her words better than mine. So one of the very first projects that we needed to take care of was, as we were looking through the technologies of our classrooms, they were all old. Projectors were 6, 7 years old. Document cameras were various makes, models that had been bought, some from Amazon for $100 and some for several $100s purchased through grants and other funds. It was kind of a mishmash of technologies. We had 175 classrooms district-wide that all needed some type of refresh, and we were really highly focused on equity. We'd looked at the research around the need for voice amplification systems to make sure that kids can hear. We wanted to make sure that kids could see the content, and we needed good tools to do that. The challenge with a project of 175 classrooms, and I know that's not a lot compared to, let's say, a North Shore where you've got 31 schools. But for our 6-school district, 175 classrooms is a lot. As we were estimating the project costs, if we had to purchase the old way, we were looking at a project to upgrade all of our classrooms at $1.5 million. Budgeted through the technology plan was only $1 million. And through the magic of the leasing and gaining the capital up front, we were able to get that project down to $968K over 4 years. So let me show you how that happened. So here's the dollars and cents of how this project worked. So our annual budget for the project was about $250K. So I think that was our big number, that over 4 years, we had budgeted $1 million to support 175 classrooms upgrades. So we needed to keep our annual payment to $250K. We didn't have more than that. That's all we had. So we went to the vendors and we said, hey, we've got a big project for you, or big for us. We've got 175 classrooms. And through several negotiations back and forth, we were able to achieve some significant savings by using Insight Financial's capital to negotiate those savings. So the interactive displays, contract pricing, OETC pricing at the time was about $4,600 per display. By contacting the vendors directly and working with the manufacturer, we were able to get that down to about $2,500 display. So pretty significant savings, and that happened for most of the different pieces because of the size of the project. If we'd been able to finance that project with cash all up front, it would have come in at about $838,000. But again, we didn't have $838,000 without laying off staff. So we decided to go the leasing route, and the 4-year project cost with the lease financing was $923,000, which puts our annual payments right around $230,000 a year. And again, so over what we would have done, we had budgeted $250K to only do some classrooms. And by using the lease capital, we were able to get this project down to $230,000 a year, and we did all of our classrooms. And the school board was super excited because we saved 39% over what we had been spending in the past on the one-off classrooms that we're doing. So I'm going to pause there to see if anybody has any questions for Colleen or I about how that might have worked. Oh, and I will say, so there's a bullet point here. We do own this equipment at the end of the lease. So we know that this equipment, we expect its lifespan to be 7 to 10 years. So we wanted to make, for this project, we wanted to make sure that we actually own the equipment at the end of the lease.
So Robert, there is a question. David Lawrence from Ben Lapine is wondering, how often do you review the plan? Is that review scheduled, and who is in the pool to offer input?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have a technology committee that was responsible for writing the initial plan. As we went through this process, we brought that committee together to talk through this project and this idea of the lease. And so they basically approved the plan through the superintendent, and our assistant superintendent was on the plan. So what was a plus is many teachers, we had already seeded many classrooms with some of this technology throughout the district. So it was already seen as valuable, and a lot of people wanted it. So we didn't have any kind of pushback from the technology committee in terms of getting this. When Colleen was able to present to the team this new idea, they were pretty well sold once they knew that every classroom district-wide would have exactly the same tools. So coming, I guess.
I was just thinking, also just, there's a couple of projects that we're going to talk about. This specific one, I think we put on a 4-year to align with the tech levy, but there will be ownership on the classroom technology because that's got a little bit longer life. But when we get to the devices, we also align that with the levy. So really the idea is that you will have the ability to reevaluate every 4 years what the right tools are.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was important for us to make sure that we aligned that to that 4-year cycle. So that way we weren't in a situation of making payments outside of our cycles. I will say, and one of the cool things that I wish I had a few pictures of kids surprised when they came back to school. So this project was a project pre-COVID. It hit classrooms the fall of 2019 when we had we worked with the installers to make sure that all of the equipment was in the classroom for the very first day of school. So our kindergartners, when they arrived, they were all surprised to see these big displays in every classroom. All the way through high school students. It was a huge upgrade for the Anacortes School District, and everybody had access to it. And one of the things that really helped with was our professional learning. Our professional learning was focused not on just a small group or 30 teachers who are going to be in this small group of brand new implementers. Everybody was in, and everybody was at the same place, which was, we're going to learn this together. And at the time I kept telling people, oh, this is a 3 to 5 year plan for learning how to use this technology. A little bit here, a little bit there, but we're all going to learn together over the next 3 to 5 years. What we didn't know was that COVID pandemic was going to hit us later in the year, and we're going to take this 3 to 5 year plan of professional learning and turn it into 3 to 5 weeks. And I think many districts throughout the United States were in the same place. So
we do have one other question.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to get to this, Martha, but was there an option to hand back the equipment, Chromebooks or laptops at the end of the lease? So maybe that's a good transition into the next project, Robert.
Yeah, definitely. Let me go to the next slide. So once we had success with this first project, which was the classroom displays, that worked out really well. That was the big, that's how we got our board involved. In leasing, they were kind of hesitant to start with, but that project went very well. So when it came time to talk about our device refresh plan, we needed to, this slide's a little off. It should say 3,000 devices there. Sorry for the error. This was, again, I tried to update from the last time I had prepared this presentation, but I missed that one. But basically, we needed to do a device refresh for our all of our students K through 12. The technology plan indicated that our K through 5 students, we should be at a 2-to-1 ratio, so 2 students to 1 device. And then our secondary students were at 1-to-1, grades 6 through 12. Again, luckily, because of lease financing, we were able to negotiate some steep discounts, and we were able to change the tech plan from a 2-to-1 at elementary to a 1-to-1 at elementary. So our estimated project costs for this, purchasing the old way, which is a few devices at a time over the 4-year cycle, would have been 1.62 million. By going and budgeted in the tech plan was about 1.5 million for this. And again, this is 2-to-1 at K5 and 1-to-1 at 612. Budgeted was $1.5 million. We were able to get to 1-to-1 grades pre-K through 12 for 1.47 million. And so we'll talk about how the numbers work on that project. So this was a big win for us. We didn't know this was actually a project planned for 2019 for a spring deployment. If you remember what was happening, COVID was about to hit us just a year later. So looking at the overall, the numbers, we chose to do this on a 4-year lease cycle. So we have we have 8 annual payments to match our November and April collection cycle. So that was something unique that Colleen was able to negotiate, is because we get half our annual money in November and we get the other half of our tax dollars in April, and Colleen and the Insight team were able to work those details out for us. So we have half payments for each of our annual payments. We purchased just over 3,000 devices. On devices, there wasn't a big steep discount, but we did, by doing the lease plan, we did save about $50 per device.
And you want me to explain that? So
yeah, go ahead.
So this is a technology refresh plan where obviously what we were trying to do was build a predictable budget for this equipment. But what we're doing is we are investing residual value into that equipment because we own the lifecycle management piece of this. So to answer your question, Martha, that equipment does come back to us at the end of the 4 years. So that's the strategy that Robert and I put together, is like, we want to match the useful life of this equipment, not only to the tech levy and to the funding, but also to what the right useful life is of that equipment. So that's how we designed this as a full life cycle strategy and management.
Yeah, and what was really interesting about this, so when we were initially did the project came in 2 phases. The first phase, we did our K through 8, and then the second phase was our 9 through 12 students. But Colleen was able to work it all out for us to get us to these great numbers. Because we were a year off in the cycle planning between our K 8 and our 9 through 12, we did choose on the secondary devices, our high school devices, to put those on a little bit different schedule. So they're like on a 3-year, but our other devices are on a 4-year, and they all renew at the same time. And what that's going to do for us in our next plan is, instead of buying a few thousand devices, we'll be able to buy 3,000 devices all at once for our next cycle, which is going to be really helpful for us as we negotiate the best device for the least amount of money. And then again, like Colleen said, is, investing. We don't keep these devices after 4 years. They go away. And we've got some options on how we might make them go away at the end. And so, Colleen, do you want to speak to any of the options that, in terms of purchase for families, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So at the end of the lease, there are multiple options. If you needed to buy any of them to keep them, you could. If you needed to extend for a little bit longer, you could do that. I mean, we had a lot of districts having to extend with the pandemic, even though we were, at the end of the lease schedule. Some of them extended for 6 months just to, be able to have that devices at home. And then you have the option to return them to us, and then you also could potentially have the option to sell them to families at the end of the lease. The nice thing about our program is that we allow you to pick and choose between those options, so you're not stuck with one choice. So that's the idea, is that what we want to do is give you flexibility and have the option to be able to refresh what you need to do at the end of the term.
Mm-hmm. And I think I also appreciate, Colleen, one of the things that you shared with me as we were talking through this project and working through, is that some of those decisions, we know that we don't want to own the devices at the end right now. Today, that's what we know. 2 years from now, when we have to think through the device refresh in 2023, our plans might change. Maybe we do need to own some. maybe we don't, or maybe we'd like to have the option for our families to purchase the devices at the end. And I mean, some of those flexible options that you provided that we can work out at the details at the end is going to be helpful, so we don't have to think through all of those details now up front.
We have one other question from David. So he asked, does your plan have language on the life cycle of technology and possible new technology?
Yeah, it does. So currently the technology plan that expires in 2022, so we'll be doing a rewrite of the plan, has our student devices on a 4-year refresh cycle. I would love to see that at a 3-year life cycle for our staff and high school machines, just because I think 4 years is a long time. But right now we're living the plan as is, as written, which is a 4-year. On our classroom presentation tools, it was on a 10-year cycle, which was a little optimistic. So we, in terms of our budgeting with Colleen, we've really looked at that as being more of a 7 to 8 year life cycle for the interactive flat panels based on LED life and some other things that we did some research on.
So Rob Singleton is asking, when does a student get a new Chromebook and how long do they get to keep it?
Yeah, so we check out devices to the student. They get to keep their device year over year, so they have the same device. So at the start of COVID is when we checked out we used to be classroom based for K through 5, 1-to-1 for 6 through 12. When COVID hit, we checked out all of our devices to our elementary students. So now all of our elementary and secondary students have a device checked out to them. It's assigned to them. That is their device. How we handle swaps when they occur. So if there's no obvious big damage to a device, then we just swap the device and give them a new one from our swap pool. So we included a swap pool with the devices that we leased from Insight. If there's obvious damage, or if it appears that the kid really wants their Chromebook, so we do have some kids who just really, really want their Chromebook, we check out a loaner, and then we give their other device back after after it's repaired. We bundled, one of the things that's not included here, we did include a warranty and accidental damage protection as part of our project with devices. And I will say that although it was an added expense, an extra $90 per device, knowing that my team is not focused on replacing batteries, keyboards, broken screens, and instead is focused on customer service and making sure that kids and families have what they need when they need it, has been a huge boon to us. We basically work with our partner Trafera, who was Firefly Computers. What's awesome about them is we just pack 10 devices into a box, we ship them off, they fix it, they send it back, and we just keep swapping devices as needed. And so far it hasn't been a problem. We do have a few frequent flyers, but they were frequent flyers before this project. We knew about them, they knew about us, and we just deal. But the other plus to this, and I will say that was a big win, how we pitched this to the board, was that extra $90. Also, in terms of our equity move, was how do we reduce and remove fines and fees for families? Because we do have families who struggle to pay those annual technology fees, and they also struggle when their kids have accidents. So in my pitching this to the school board, I said, hey, if we do this project, I'll be able to remove, there will be no technology fee for any Anacortes School District student, and there will be no fines for our families if devices get broken. And the school board decided that that was an awesome thing to be able to do, to say, we're just going to cover the cost into the tech levy, and my team's not focused. We're not worried about how much this is going to cost us. So it has been a real win.
So and that obviously also matched the lease term, the term of the extended warranty, which I think is a valuable piece of this. But in terms of incidences, are you feeling like that was worth the investment?
Yes. And the reason why I say it's actually not based on the numbers, because the numbers have actually been pretty low. It's actually, so we have 2 technicians who support 2,900 devices out in the field at any given time. It doesn't take too many devices to overwhelm them to where we have more broken sitting on a counter than we have available to us. So yes, it was expensive, but it's like having staff that flexes with our needs. So some weeks they might have 5 devices that need to go back, and then there have been other weeks where there are 20 devices to go back. I can't afford to pull them off the phones to support students so that they can fix batteries, or take them off the phone so that they can fix screens. I don't have to do that, because all they do is they contact Trafera, send them the serial number information, pack a box, and send it off, and it's repaired. And that has been a real win for us, because my team's not stressed out about devices piling up on counters and waiting for parts, and our Trafera does that for us. So
okay, so we have a couple more questions. So, and this is along that same line, which is, do you think that the outsourcing of services and repairs is scalable for a larger district that has a larger pool of Chrome devices? So I can give my opinion, which is I think that actually it probably makes more sense. But Robert, what is your
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the partner you choose. We've been extremely happy with Firefly and Trafera. We used to go directly through Lenovo for our repairs. We found the Lenovo manufacture process really cumbersome and difficult. Once we shifted to Lenovo's repair partner, they have several in the United States. Trafera was one of them, but Trafera offered the best value for us in terms of sending us the box, sending us the shipping labels, sending us all of the resources we needed to get the devices to them, and a great back-end tracking process. So my techs can log into the portal, they can see where the device is, which technician's repairing it on their side, when the anticipated return of that device will be. They just do an exceptional job. And they're a big player in this market. And so they've got a warehouse that's all they do, and a great team of people supporting them. So I would say that yes, if you find the right partner, it's definitely worthwhile, especially if you're looking to what would I say? Maybe the right word, capitalize your repair costs up front, right? So I know exactly how much our repair costs are. We budgeted for them. It's $89 for the 4 years. That's how much I pay to keep the device up and running for the next 4 years. Whereas before, when we ran into part shortages with our HPs, not to say that HP is a bad brand, but we just ran into some part shortages. At one point, screens were costing $500 for a touch screen, because there was such a huge demand and a very short supply. And the year before we did this project, we spent $50,000 on device repairs through HP on parts and labor. So
I was actually on a call yesterday with someone who does warranty plans and insurance plans and those kinds of things, just like trying to learn more about it. And that's exactly what she said, was that $100 in the scheme of things, when it's only like a couple $100 device, seems like it's a lot. But from a budget perspective, that's all you'll pay for the entire time, 4 years, right?
Right.
So that's the thing. So we have another question, which I actually think is an interesting one, which is, so keeping a Chromebook for only 4 out of the 7 years pencils out better given the residual value. And I think there's a couple of things to unpack in that question, but if you want to start, Robert, and then I'll certainly chime in.
Yeah, I think, so in terms of the lease, for our purposes, we wanted to be able to refresh every 4. Like the tech plan kind of asked for that kind of refresh. The devices we purchased, they are good for us through 2027. So they have a value way after us. The plus for us is if we decide that the devices in 2023 are still a good value and we want to hold on to them because they, for whatever reason, we feel that's important, knowing that Insight will make that happen for us, we could either choose to extend terms or not, will help us do that. And then, Colleen, if you want to speak to residual values, because that's more your territory than mine, but for us, 4 years is plenty. We'd like a refresh every 4.
Yeah, and I think, so yes, there is a little bit of residual value in 4 years, or there's a little bit more in 3 years. But I would say that our average district probably does the 4-year term. it ends up working out probably less than 0% financing, or just straight around, even. But what it does is it really matches the useful life of that equipment. So interesting enough, just along those lines of the services or the ADP option, is that most companies will not even offer that option after 4 years, because what happens is that, again, it's a couple $100 device, so it starts losing battery life. It stops working. So yes, technically your license will go longer, but the actual performance of the device will decline significantly after 4 years. And what she said is that their data tells them that after the 4th year, almost every device needs to be either serviced or replaced. So that's what we're trying to do with the leasing program, is to match the real useful life, and then obviously have a refresh plan so that your students have the tools that they need, to learn. Okay, I want to work through these questions, so hopefully there's a bunch more, Robert. So question around the logistics of student device is out for service. How many do you have in reserve? And kind of what happens with that.
Yeah, so in terms of our swap pool, so we are in a situation of declining enrollment right now in the Anacortes School District. So when we started this project, we had just about 3,000 students district-wide. We've since now dropped to 2,500 students district-wide. Some other things that played into the swap pool conversation, initially we planned for a 5% pool of devices, because that was historical based on the old device. We weren't sure where to start. What we've learned is we probably only needed 1%. With the warranty and accidental damage protection, we only really needed a 1% swap pool. The other thing that's played into the swap pool idea is when we started this project K through 5 for our elementary schools, it was a cart-based model, and we had to provide more devices based on minimum class size. So for our elementary schools, like in the 5th grade, they can have up to 27 kids. So we made sure that there are 28 devices in every cart for 5th grade and 27 in 4th grade. And so we had to buy a bunch of extra devices based on a cart-based model to fit the carts to the maximum enrollments for those classes. Once we came into COVID and we had to pull everything back and we were supporting everything centrally and checking out devices, we now have, fortunately and fortunately, we have a swap pool now of about 500 devices, because we have way fewer kids than we started. We've lost about 400 kids since COVID began district-wide. It's expensive to live in Anacortes, and we've lost a lot of our families who are economically disadvantaged to other places. So I wouldn't say that our model of swap pool, you can go by that, but it sure is nice having all of those extra devices, because we can swap a whole elementary schools if we needed to tomorrow.
Just question on your schedule. So are you guys back full time? And I think you answered this, but are the kids now, they're all checked out and they're bringing them back and forth from home to school?
Yeah, so we are, starting Thursday this week, our elementary students will be back full-time Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and online on Wednesdays. Our secondary students, because of current COVID restrictions, are staying on a hybrid A-B schedule. So we've got some students going Monday and Thursday, and online Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and the other kids going Tuesday and Friday, with Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday as their online days. But all of the devices, if teachers want devices in their classroom during the school day, they request that students bring their device and they carry them back and forth to school each day fully charged. I don't need to speak to the merits of a Chromebook, I don't think. Long battery life, all of those things are really a positive for us. Management of those devices, it's easy to manage them. So okay. In terms of that, I was going to just say, I wanted to bring up a point about the warranty and accidental damage. One of the things, I was just running the numbers. We spent about $270,000 over 4 years on that accidental damage warranty plan. And one of the things that you have to remember, if you're not including the cost of your employees to do the fixing and the time that they spend, then you're not really doing total costs. So be sure as you're doing your own calculations to include employee time and the amount of time it takes to fix the devices. So for that $270,000 over 4 years, and my team's not fixing anything that's broken, made it so that they could support students and families with the good questions they had about using technology while we were through COVID.
There is a question in regards to adding, I think I'm going to take this one unless you want to, but it's like, what's the process for adding leases before the 4-year cycle is over? Prorated leases to keep the cycle on track district-wide. So we've actually had a couple of different projects, and actually we're doing one right now where one of the options is, oh shoot. Oh.
Uh-oh. Colleen just left, so something must have happened. She must have got rebooted. So hopefully she's come back. I'll let her come back to that question. And I'm just looking, any other questions that I can answer from the list here? I think that brings us up. So I'm going to move forward. We'll come back to that question. So one of the things that, although we're not going to really discuss all of the projects that we've done through leasing, this has been a really winning model for us in order to make sure that things are reliable and our customer satisfaction is high. So like we talked about, we were able to replace all of our classroom audio and visual tools in every classroom district-wide. We standardized our student computing. So in Anacortes, we have 3,000 devices that are all the same make model. They're Lenovo 500E Gen 2 Chromebooks with the stylus. Every student grade K through 12 uses the same device. And what we learned through COVID is by having the same device in the same family, the high schooler is able to support the middle schooler, which is able to support the elementary student. So if they have questions about how to use the device, kids and families are sharing strategies back and forth. If they'd had different devices, which is what we had in the past, we used to have elementary students with Dell Venue tablets, and the middle schooler had a traditional laptop, and our high schoolers had touchscreen laptops. Those make model differences cause an issue where families weren't able to support each other. We also standardized. Oh, you're back, Colleen.
Sorry. So sorry.
No worries. So we'll come back. I was just kind of doing a summary of what we've done through leasing. I'll let you come back to the question you were going to answer here in a moment. We've also been able, through Colleen's help, we've modernized all of our CTE labs. So we replaced all of the computers. We have the latest, greatest iMacs in our studio. We have, nice Dell machines in our robotics engineering labs. We were able to standardize our productivity and software tools. So we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. All of our staff are using mobile laptops. So they're using laptops, and we standardized that across everybody. So this also was people thought I was crazy for giving laptops to our secretaries in the main offices because they'd always use desktops, but I wanted mobility. And because we had chosen that during COVID, when everybody started working from home, that saved our bacon yet again. So thank you for Colleen for also pushing some of that on our, to help us think through that. We've standardized our print copy solutions. So recently, this last year during COVID, we actually surplused every HP printer, Dell printer, you name it, printer and copier in the district. And we contacted a different company, but now we have Konica Minolta equipment in every building, and it's now standardized and managed centrally. And then this summer, because we saved money, we met our budget targets. We were able, this summer, we're going to be replacing our data center and our Wi-Fi networks this summer. So we are going to be doing massive Wi-Fi upgrades in all of our elementary schools. We replaced the back end of our data center to the VxRail environment. And again, that was through leasing. So all of these things have made it such that we have standardization, which increases reliability for all of our end users. My team is much happier now because when they troubleshoot, they're only troubleshooting a few things, well-known things, versus all of the things that they used to troubleshoot before. And for our teachers and staff and our students and families at home, we now receive high marks for our customer service and their satisfaction with what technology services provide. And had we not done the leasing route, I don't think we'd be there right now. I really think we'd be in a different place. So Colleen, did you want to go back to the question you were?
Oh, sorry. I think it was just in regards to, like, you know, how do we match, you know, the life. So I think a couple of things. So we did a couple different projects with different terms for Robert specifically. But I do have other customers that that don't have the ability to kind of do everything at once. Like, we really had the ability to do a large accelerated program for Robert. So I have customers who add equipment each year, and then they have their plan for refreshing that way, and we go either 3 or 4 years. So they can't hear me.
Huh? I can
Can you
hear you.
me?
I can hear you.
Huh.
So Alan, can you? You're on there. Can you hear Colleen? Yep. It looks like we're getting plus.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can. Yes, Colleen, I can hear you.
Okay. You know, so I think really and one of the things about working with us is that we will customize the solution to what works for your district. So if you have levy dollars and we want to match that, and we're going to do 2 payments a year aligned with that timing for 4 years, or actually, like, we have a situation right now that Andy's working on at Highline where theirs is a shorter tech levy. And so we'll completely design the way that you add lease schedules based on what you need for your district. So I don't think everything always has to all come off at the same time. I mean, sometimes it's an easier load if it goes in different terms. And actually, Robert, I think we did the teacher devices on 3, right? And then the students on 4?
No, we did.
Right?
Or
Okay.
they just were at we did the teacher machines as a very first. Yeah, we did teacher machines and the classroom displays at the same time.
Perfect. There was a question about infrastructure and your
E-rate.
Yeah, E-rate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, we do benefit from the Category 2 E-rate. So our project is funded through E-rate. So we get a 60% discount. The 40% that we have to pay, we were able to pay because, again, Colleen and Insight Financial freed up our capital in a way that we hadn't anticipated. So we were able, instead of doing 1 school per summer, we saved all of our schools for a single summer. And that single summer is happening this coming summer. And then they also changed the E-rate rules, so where now we have a 5-year cycle, and they've done some things since then, but the fact that Insight helped free up some capital that we were able then to bank forward allowed us to pay cash for our portion of the discount for that Cat 2 project. So, all right. Let's talk about software subscriptions. So this is something that Colleen brought to my attention, which we hadn't anticipated. It wasn't even a project on my radar. So in the past, we had looked at licensing several tools, and we had a list of tools that we licensed district-wide. And Colleen, when she heard, she asked a good question in our conversations around Chromebooks. She's like, hey, are you guys using any of these tools? Are you licensing them on the annual? And I was like, well, yeah, we've got a bunch of them. Here's our list. We licensed WeVideo, Soundtrap, Cami, LucidChart, LucidPress. These tools that basically extend the capability of the Chromebook in really great ways. She asked about that, and I was like, well, yeah, we do license these things. And she's like, well, you might be able to get a better deal if you licensed over a multi-year term. So why don't you talk to the vendors and we can bundle that into your Chromebook lease? So I did the legwork talking to the vendors to see what it would look like. And I reached out to each of the vendors and said, hey, we've got this opportunity where we would like to sign a multi-year agreement. We'll pay cash up front for that multi-year agreement. What kind of discount can you give me over our annual price? And one of the things that was crazy, when they heard cash up front, all of these software developers were willing to take cash up front for really steep discounts. So on average, we saved 30% on these software subscriptions over annual pricing on our annual renewal.
So to add on to that, like, so we can do that really for any, for any type of program. So I actually think we also maybe on the first one, we maybe did Go Guardian also, Robert. So like that's a tool, or like Lightspeed.
Yeah, Go Guardian, I forgot to put on the list.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. But I think actually Salem Kaiser is looking at doing this with us for a Lightspeed option. So any of those kinds of things, I think this is just a thought starter, but I think it's a good example of where there are discounts to be had, and that process could sometimes be cumbersome to do multi-year with annual budgets. But with our program, you can do it. So I think all of those pieces, those are just like thought starters and things to think about. Obviously, we're very involved in ACPE. We have a contract with OETC for technology leasing. So really, we can customize our solution to make sure that you get the technology that you need, and that we match the funding and the funding options, with that.
Yeah, and I would say just the savings. I mean, this made a big deal, because what those savings did, that 30% discounting, what that actually did for our teaching and learning team, it made so our dollars that we had for other things that they wanted to do were available during COVID, where they wouldn't have been. And the other thing that we've learned as an unintended consequence, we didn't think that this was going to be a thing, but it became a thing, is that once we told teachers that these tools were going to persist for more than a 1-year cycle, they weren't going to be continually up for renewal and up for new decision making, we've seen teachers and students more likely to adopt these tools. So for example, Soundtrap, which is an online audio editing platform, our music teachers, as COVID hit, use that to do choral projects. They've used it to do band projects where the kids work together to sing together. They each record their own track. Then they merge it into a multi-track audio file, and they can do that collaboratively online simultaneously. And they were able to use these tools. And so like Carol Leander, she's our choir teacher. She is a technophobe. She's a self-acknowledged technophobe, but through COVID has learned how to use Soundtrap and has done some really amazing things. So they were able to continue with their Christmas concert through Soundtrap. Our band teacher was able to do several performances through that tool. And so these are things that we couldn't have anticipated. Had we not had these tools, we would have had kids who didn't get to participate in the music program in the way that they got to. And Soundtrap, because it's also a podcasting tool, because of Carol's work and success with that, now our English teachers are using it for podcasting in their journalism program. So it's just amazing how, and when people keep asking, don't make this go away, is this going to go away at the end of this year? And we've been able to say to all of our teachers, no, it's here through 2023, and we'll get to rethink our decision making at that time. Former Superintendent Dr. Wenzel, one of the things that he was hesitant at first to move forward in a big, bold way, but I had to remind him that in our strategic plan, it talks about being bold. One of the things so he kind of took I'm just going to watch and wait place, but here's what he said. When a tech team can strategically stretch dollars to impact equipment purchases, it can have a profound impact in the classroom. That's what happened in Anacortes. Upgraded student devices, along with interactive display technology across schools, truly made learning pop. We did far more than we thought possible. And I can't say, this year with COVID has been tough on all of us. And I can honestly say, had it not been for what we had done pre-COVID and encouraged the school board and the leadership team to rethink their purchasing processes, we would not have been able to do all the things that we did in COVID. So now we got some big questions, but I'm just looking at time. Where are we at, Alan, in terms of time?
We've got 15 minutes left, Robert.
Okay, great. Well, so I'll speak to, I think one of the big questions is, all of these things were really cool, but now comes the politics of some of these big decisions, especially if you have a district who's always paid for everything with cash up front. How do you get them to move into a leasing model? So that's the big question. And one of the things that I had to do was show total cost of ownership over time. So showing some of the costs for things if we purchase the old way versus what things would cost if we purchase the new way. We had some, we have an accountant on our school board who was really cognizant of costs. And so when I could show him total costs over time, he instantly is like, wow, you can't afford not to do this. And that swayed the school board for the very first project. I also worked with our business office. So Dave Krams, our executive director of finance, he had some experience doing leasing when he was in a previous school district. And so one of the things, he had some concerns around the end terms because he'd been burned by different leasing partners in the past. And so he had lots of great questions for Colleen and team about what do the end terms look like? What are our escape clauses, so to speak? And so, Colleen, do you want to speak to some of the escape clauses?
Well,
Because I think that really swayed our business office.
Sure. So I know one thing for him for sure was the OETC contract. Us having that technology leasing RFP done through OETC was a very big factor. I think that takes everybody's like shoulders down. Like, okay, this is fully vetted. But I think the other thing is really just the ability to have that picking and choosing. At the end of the lease, we also allow for like returns. So we don't tie you to that specific serial number. The other piece that I think is a very big part of our program is that we give you access to AMIS, which is a lease management tool, which basically shows you when the lease starts, when the lease ends, gives you full detail of every single piece of equipment that you've got on lease with us, and then also gives notice to expiring leases. So that's really where at the end, sometimes what happens is like, let's say, 4 years from now, if Robert is not there, somebody needs to know that lease is expiring. So we do give notice to expiring leases so that things don't happen where you don't extend automatically. We're committed in terms of the partnership to make sure that the refresh piece of this happens effectively for you. So I think those are the big things. I think I got all of those. So we have a couple questions.
Yeah,
so,
I just saw that.
Okay. Okay. So one of the questions is do you think you could have pulled this off without a tech levy? So
yeah, I'll answer that. For all of the big projects, I would say we would not have been able to go to the scale that we did. And we probably wouldn't have bought what we bought. So I would say based on if I had to just use our general fund dollars, yes, we would have still done the projects. We would have just done them with lesser devices and pick and chose only those things that were essential. So when we were looking at the project, with the flat panel conversation, we knew we wanted flat panels because of their longevity and the clarity of the image that kids can see. But because the lease provided some better terms, we were able to get flat panels with interactive touch technology versus just traditional flat panel consumer grade TV type equipment. So that's someplace you could choose to flex if you're using just general fund dollars. We chose for our staff devices, we chose Dell Latitude 7000 series laptops with touch screens and extra memory and extra storage space. Those were some things we could have downgraded to a non-touch screen, maybe a 5000 series or a 3000 series Latitude device instead of what we chose. And I think we would have then still been able to meet our targets. We might also have chosen, when we did the staff devices, we also added second monitors to go with all of our teacher machines, and for the office staff, we did dual monitor setups. We could have chosen not to do that and used existing hardware that we had in the district. On the student devices, we chose the best Chromebook that money could buy. That was a rugged device at the time that had all of the features, a touchscreen, the stylus pen, the 360 hinge, rugged edges and corners. We chose an accidental damage warranty. Like, we could have stripped back and gone with a more basic Chromebook and still probably met the targets with our general fund. So it's really with the tech levy, we were able to get everything people wanted. People didn't have to choose something that not. But if we don't pass the next tech levy, we'll still refresh this way. We just will get lesser devices.
So, and I think, very fortunate in Washington, obviously so many of our districts have tech levy, have those dollars that support their IT initiatives, which is a really amazing thing. But across the country, most districts do not have this. I mean, they have some form of funding. And so what we're looking at is like, let's try to look at what annual funding that you have that is consistent, or somewhat consistent, to try to build the plan out. So again, we'll work with you on, strategies to, be able to get what you need and then have a predictable budget. Rob?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can spend money to fix old broken stuff, or you can spend money on things that are reliable and don't require all the repair. And that's Anacortes. When I arrived, we were spending a lot of money fixing old broken stuff. And now we spend money to support the lease payments for stuff that works. And so I think that's the other thing when you're looking at your annual budget. If you don't have a tech levy or you don't have those outside sources, be sure to look at every piece of your budget and then ask yourself, can I roll that over into a lease payment if I know that the equipment I'm using is more consistent and doesn't require the level of repair that the current stuff does? And so we did do some of that exploration. Like, can I take this repair budget and can I cut it in half? And if I can cut it in half, then I can move those dollars into another place that would support the device payments. So, and we also looked at staffing. If my staff don't need to repair devices, are there ways that I can put their time to other things? Or can I also look at, perhaps, depending on the contract language of contracts, can you also look at things like reducing their days? Or, you can look at other places you may be spending money that are that you might not have looked at in the past.
So then there's another question about running into resistance for leasing in the event that there is another economic downturn and lower state revenues.
Yeah, that's a challenge. So our tech levy will go to voters again in 2022 in February. So we really hope that our voters will continue to support us. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll have to make some different decisions. And this is where, again, coming back to the business office, Dave Cram, he's very conservative in how he approaches finance. And I think most finance people wants to know what are our exit strategies if something goes wrong. So maybe, Colleen, you can speak to some of those exit strategies.
Sure. So one thing that I want to say first, though, is that obviously the now one-to-one or the idea of every kid having a computer, that is not going away, right? We were almost forced into it. We were forced into that, being a thing. And that's not going to go away. And actually, in many districts, sometimes they have to have like extra computers on site because some of the kids don't always bring them back and forth. So there's there's a whole thing around that. So that's not going to go away. So obviously, there's always things that are going to happen relative to the economy being up or down. The thing that happens with leasing is that you have a flat line from a budget perspective. So instead of having to go spend, have a very big spike for equipment, capital equipment costs, you basically have an even line. And I think it's very easy to not only sell it to the business office, but also to the board, is that what we're trying to do is build a very predictable budget to be able to support teaching and learning. And that does seem to really work with people can grasp that, that understanding. What could happen is if you don't lease, right, and you don't have that, it's like, you're going to have to keep that equipment longer than you wanted to, and then you're going to be back to what Robert was saying, which is spending dollars on repairs, having downtime in the classroom. So that's our whole program, is really trying to take these big spikes in capital spending and even them out, which really should help with any economic downturns or changes in sources of funding. I know one of the things that some of our partners say is that one of the things about the leasing program is that it does kind of encumber the dollars. So nobody can take them away from you. It's like, this is what I need. And it's super consistent. So hopefully that answers your question, Rob.
Yeah, I will speak to that as well, Colleen. So one of the things that happened mid-levy cycle was our teachers union bargained. And so one of the positives for us was that when they were looking at pots of fund to support increase in pay, they weren't able to tap the tech levy in the way that maybe other districts I've seen in the past have, which is to support, the tech levy does support professional learning and professional development. And the way they did tap that in our district was they basically created a stipend for every teacher to support their use of technology. But because we already had payments in process and that those obligations needed to be met, the district wasn't able to tap that budget in the way that they might have had those payments not been set. So for us, that made it so that way the technology stayed in the hands of kids. It still provided professional learning and professional development for teachers, and it helped to balance the equation as we were having those contract negotiations. So this question, I think we just have a few more minutes left. I wanted to jump to this question. How do you choose a leasing partner? And I'll just speak from Anacortes. So we were looking for someone who already was on a state contract or some type of contract vehicle, so we didn't have to go out and negotiate those terms ourselves. So Insight was already on the OETC contract. We were able to leverage that. The other thing that we were looking for in a leasing partner is, can the leasing partner work with us on multiple projects? Because we knew we had lots of projects coming up. We didn't want to be in Anacortes because we have a small business office team. They really didn't want to be dealing with Dell Financial, HP Financial, Minolta Financial. They really wanted consistent leasing terms with one vendor. And Colleen has been a great partner in that, making sure that we have multiple lease schedules. We only had to go to the board once to get the first contract signed, and then we've been able to add lease schedules to that initial agreement. So that's been a win for our school board too. They don't have to read through all the fine print of multiple contracts. They've done it once, and now we have this relationship that will persist over time. So those are some of the things. The other thing I would look for is, do you have a thought partner in that company that can help identify, once they know what your thoughts and plans are, can they read your tech plan and go, hey, I think I can help you with that? And then they bring ideas to the table and they make contacts to other districts who have done similar things in big, bold ways. And again, Insight was constantly connecting me to people, not just in Washington State, but in California and Oregon, for people who'd already done some of this work. And I could get some reference checking, but also to hear their great ideas. How did they make this work in their district? And so that was really helpful as well. So I'll just, I hate, I'm biased a little bit, but Insight has been that thought partner for us. So I'm hoping that everybody on your team, Colleen, is the same. I've met Andy, so I know Andy's the same way. I've not met other members of your team, but they've both been great thought partners.
So Andy and I cover Washington and Oregon. So so it's the two of us. So you've met both of us, but we have a team throughout the country. I'm leading that team, so I'm I think the nicest thing, or the thing that I think is so great is just being able to help facilitate learning. That's the exciting thing. I mean, I've been doing technology leasing for a long time, and I've been specifically in K-12 for the last 5 or 6 years. And it's the most rewarding of my career, because I think that, as Robert has demonstrated, real change is actually available. And with some thought and with some customization and really designing a program, we can really affect change. And that's a very exciting thing. So. Yeah,
I would agree. It's been amazing to see what's the transformation that's occurred in Anacortes School District over the last 3 years. COVID obviously accelerated our plans in ways we couldn't have anticipated. But the acceleration, had it not been, our partnership would have It would have been much more difficult. So thank you for Colleen and her foresight and helping us do these cool things.
So this one is the high five, but are there tacos or something? Oh no, it's not. It looks like there are tacos.
Tacos. I was like, I don't see tacos.
I wish we had tacos. That would be awesome.
Tacos. I think like that's the biggest form of compliment, right?
That would be great. I'm putting that down like as a feature request as we add it.
Taco. Thanks, you guys.
Excellent.
Oh, I'm
Well,
jealous. You're at the Welches. You're at the Welches. Oh man.
we're not. Well, I'm sitting in. No, I'm sitting in Salem right now. Oh, I don't know why it says I'm in Welch's, but I'm not. I'm here in Salem in OATC's offices. Well, that was awesome. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Colleen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That worked. I really enjoyed that. I learned a bunch of stuff there. So a couple of things before we end the session here, just to remind people, first of all, you can reach out to Colleen or Robert, I'm sure, if you've got more questions.
Yeah, definitely,
I'm sure
please.
they're happy to answer questions. Also, if you have a chance today, to all the participants, go ahead and stop by, see any of our sponsors and say thanks. That's how we were able to still have this event this year and how we'll have the event again really back in Welch as well. I'll get to see everybody. It's great to see people virtually, but I would be better to see you guys in person. And finally,
next year.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, if we're not in person next year, then I'm bailing out because I can't do this anymore.
We will.
Maybe you can have like vaccination shots as you walk through, like, boosters.
Different kind of shots than we normally do. I like the way
That's
you're thinking
right.
there,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Also, if you still want to join one of the social events that we're having tonight, I think there's poker, there's cocktails, there's cooking classes. Go to the Discord and check in the social events channel. And I think Kevin Johnson's going to post some info about how you can still join some social events if you want to. So I'm going to let you go so you can get a little break and then come back for our first keynote for Tara Wheeler here at 10 o'clock. And again, Robert, Colleen, thanks so much. That was awesome. I appreciate it. And we'll see you all soon. Bye, everybody.
Great. Thanks so much.